Yeah. And just last month. Glad for you.
Tell me when we're on. I'm going to call to order this regular meeting of the Miami Special Utility Authority for 5:30 p.m. on Tuesday, December 17th. Second item, let's see, we don't have, I know Rick is here, Pastor Rick, and we're going to ask you to say the blessing before we move on to item 2, please.
Let's pray together. Father, I know that we are all reminded this time of the year what really is important in life, and I hope that that would be true all the time. But it's at this time of the year when we think more about love and compassion and giving and meeting the needs of others. And Father, I'm just so thankful to live in a community that does all of those things. And so we're just very thankful for that. I feel like it's a real privilege to pray for these city leaders tonight. Father, they always need wisdom. They always need endurance. They always need patience with everything that needs to go on. So, Father, would you give them all of those things, and would you just help us to realize what a blessing it is to live where we live. So, Father, thank you for all of your blessings. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 4 is public input and unscheduled personal appearances. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to address the authority on any of the agenda items? There being none, item number 5 is the consent agenda. Staff recommends items 6 through 9 be placed on the consent agenda. Are there any objections to items 6 through 9?
Mayor, if there's no objections, I'll make a motion to approve items 6 through 9 on the consent agenda.
Can we have a second, please?
I'll second.
Roll call.
Johnson,
Aye.
McLean,
Aye.
Weston,
Aye.
Charlotte,
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye. Item number 10, award bid C14-07 for automated side loader trash trucks. Tyler?
Yes, sir. I'm back with some answers to you guys' previous questions.
Good.
So tonight, the action is the award bid C1407 for automated side loader trash trucks. Like we've talked about before, some people ask on the street, how do these operate? Again, I guess they saw the last meeting, but they didn't see the first part, so we want to kind of talk about this. The driver pulls up, the joystick reaches out, grabs the container, pulls it back, dumps it into the canister on the truck, and then the truck pulls on to the next can.
Okay, and the key point, if you go back, Tyler, the key point is they require only one.
Yes, sir,
operator,
versus the 3
as opposed
employees.
to 3 currently.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
All right, thank you.
And so there's a picture of one dumping the can. Some of the positives, like you said, the reduction in the personnel. So you're going from 2 to 3 people on the truck to 1 person. Safety. It takes a lot of work to get on and off the truck on all these stops. So you're crossing traffic, all the different objects like that. And then also workman's compensation. If you're just sitting in the truck just driving and picking up stuff, there shouldn't be a lot of workman's comp claims because there shouldn't be very many injuries. And then the weight of the trucks. We're getting all these new streets. The trucks are going to be lighter because they have 2 axles versus our current 1 axle. So it'll be better on the life of the streets. And then the increased efficiency. Some people ask about the economics of the truck. So we did these figures before, but we're going to represent them tonight. One solid waste employee costs $37,500. This is with salary and benefits. Finance helped me with this. Actually, Lindsay helped me with this. So if you take that times, if the truck ran for 5 years, which they should run for 7 or 8, probably even longer than that, but we just did 5 years for this. So that's $187,500 that one employee costs for 5 years. If you take that times 2, because there's 2 employees on there, that number comes up to be $375,000 that you save by just having the 1 employee versus the 3 on the truck. And the next year we did 7. So you see the cost of having for 7 years, you get $262,500. If you multiply that by 2 for the 2 individuals on the truck plus the driver, you get $525,000. So you had the reduction again. If we took these numbers and divided it, okay, what is our payments going to be per year based on the loan? So if we borrow $300,000 over 5 years at 2.89%, that was kind of the going rate for a lease. Our monthly payment would be $5,375. Based on that, our yearly payment would be around $64,500, and then our total payment would be $322,577.60. If you take what our payment is per year and divide it by what that salary for the person is a year, you get 1.7. So you're actually saving a little bit of money here because of not having paying for the 2 employees.
And that's a loan, not a lease, right?
Yes, sir. Well,
We're not leasing it, we're purchasing it, right?
Well, yes, sir. Even that we call it a lease, that's because that's an animal of Oklahoma law. It's technically a lease, but we have a residual right to acquire the equipment at the end of the lease for a nominal sum. Was it $1 or $1?
The last time we had this meeting, I asked about a lease, and you said no, that it is, yeah, I did ask. And now with most leases, they have a maintenance pack, I mean, it comes along with it.
This is a different lease, though.
This is a different kind of a lease, sir. It's in effect a loan, but under Oklahoma law, it's called a lease.
Okay. No maintenance at all.
Just the
falls on
warranty
us.
that you have with it.
Just the factory implied warranty.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Gentlemen, if it helps any, there are limitations on public finance in Oklahoma. They sometimes seems counterintuitive or odd. Some of the things are almost just like doing business as a private business, but then other things aren't. And so financial institutions come up with creative ways to, ultimately get you to the same conclusion. And that's the nature of this lease package. It's not what you'd think of as a typical lease.
In all candor, we don't even need to do the lease because this is a trust. We could actually do a loan rather than. But because the institutions are set up to do the lease, we do that with the institutions now just to keep things consistent. We'll just use the lease. There really is no cost
have a problem
advantage or
with the lease.
disadvantage to it.
But I wanted to try to answer your question.
But we're not leasing it like you would in your private capacity. Yeah.
Okay.
And so you can see that after 5 years, if these trucks go 7, then you're kind of this is kind of when the cities see their makeup and the money is the next 2 to 3 years that they operate. And you can see our full-time employees. In 2012, we had 17 full-time employees. We currently have 11 to 12, plus we have 2 part-time. And then in days that we have heavy trash, then we pull labor. So we bring in guys from street, water, sewer, pollution control to help ride on the trucks to pick up the trash. So we're hoping with these trucks, we can get our numbers to around 10 to 11. And then the guys that we have left, we could have them out working on streets, fixing water lines, doing different other things in the city. A lot of the cities we talked to during this, they said, we found the money that we saved, we put back into infrastructure. So we, to the streets, to the water, sewer. So they like that.
I think the important thing that Tyler's trying to stress here is that there will not be an accompanying RIF with this change.
Yes.
We have already realized those savings when we had the early retirement a year ago, year and a half ago. I'm not sure exactly when it was. We have been supplementing our labor in sanitation with temporary employees and by pulling off employees from the pool, when we put everybody into the pool. So the important message here is that no one loses their job as a result of this. We've already realized those savings.
So this kind of goes to the first question that you guys ask about what cities operate CNG versus what cities operate diesels. So these are different cities we talked to that operate diesel-only automatic side loader trucks. So Edmond, Claremore, Veneta, Stillwater, and Barterville, these all operate automated trucks, but they're diesel-only. They don't have any CNG vehicles. Cities that operate CNG trucks, Oklahoma City, they have 23. Norman, they have 9. New Solutions, I don't know if you guys read the Tulsa World, but they have the Tulsa's trash currently, and they recently got it. They invited us down. We were actually down there last Thursday. They showed us their facility. A part of getting the bid, they had to be a CNG, operate CNG trucks. They have 41. They actually have slow fill and fast fill at their site, and they kind of give us some tips on some different things to look for. And they were very pleased with their CNG trucks. Everybody that we talked to were very pleased. everybody said they get a little bit less gas mileage versus the diesel. But there was a couple of changes, a couple of differences they noticed, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But all in all, everybody seemed happy with them. Maintenance issues of the CNG vehicles. This was the second question. Do we have anything that you see different between the diesel and the CNG? The spark plugs have shorter lifespan. They need to be replaced every 1,500 to 2,000 hours. Most of the cities we talked to that had CNG and New Solutions, they said they usually replace them once a year. And then also, we have the oil changes. Oil changes, we talked to them today. Got a little bit better numbers on it. They cost around $200, and this also includes a filter, a low-pressure filter that they have. In CNG fuels, there is some oil as a byproduct in it, and so this low-pressure filter helps catch that oil so it doesn't get in the motor and cause damages. Because they said if you do happen to get oil in there, then it causes havoc on your computer system. So that was kind of one of the things they said. The difference is, like I said, the oil changes are more expensive. It takes a different type of oil. They use low ash oil, and they change a little sooner, every 500 hours. As far as parts, they said they found that they're similarly priced, but that maybe if you order a part and it takes 1 day, usually it might take 4 to 5 because there's less of them out there. So that was kind of their other issue that they had. Ratio of CNG versus diesel. From talking to everybody, the diesel truck averages about 2.2 miles per gallon, and the CNG truck averaged 1.9 miles per gallon. So you can kind of see that CNG does get a less fuel mileage, not a lot, but it does get a little bit. And it's hard to, whenever you start comparing CNG to diesel, you have to think how they're rated. Diesel's by the gallons, CNG is different. So converting those to the same, that's where we came up with the 1.29.
Can you go back to that slide for a second? Okay, so whatever process you went through, this is your attempt to equate the two.
Yes, sir.
Because they're different
we actually work with
volumes
the
and-
city of Norman on this, and they actually measured their trucks for a day, and they called me back and said, hey, this is what we average, 1.9, 2.2. So we could kind of get a real-world experience number for what they were getting.
So the CNG was based on a diesel gallon equivalent.
Yes, sir.
The guy last month or whenever it was that made the presentation, his ratio was a lot different than
Yes,
this.
sir. And people talk about that, but they see that a lot more in vehicles that they convert. So you take diesel engines, convert them to run CNG also. And they said, even the people that we talked to, they said, if you're going to do CNG, go CNG only or diesel only. Don't try to get one that converted over, because that's where you see the inefficiencies.
Okay.
Trying to get them to operate together.
Does the operation of the arm, does that have anything to do with what type of fuel you're using? What drives that hydraulic arm?
This the hydraulics, so the hydraulic pump on there, which is being turned by the motor. So,
Okay. I was just, when he said that last time, I was wondering if the way that operated had something to do with the
they get. I mean,
inefficiency,
people
but
might say,
apparently
"Well, they
not.
only get 2 miles a gallon," but if you think about it, they're not really going very fast, and they just
Right. Okay.
so. Just kind of the ratio of the CNG versus diesel. This kind of gets into how we ran the numbers. Currently, the 3 trucks that we have, we averaged about 35 miles per route that they're running. By going to 2 trucks from the 3, we're estimating 90 miles per day. And whenever you say 90, you might say, well, how did it get so much higher? Well, the truck's going down the road on the right-hand side of the road, then it has to turn around and come back on the left-hand side of the road. So that's kind of where you get your, the double numbers. And from talking to everybody, they said when they went to automated trucks, they changed their routes a little bit to lower their mileage, because they said, what worked with the rear loader was not the same as what worked with the automated truck. So kind of lowering their mileage that way by changing. And that's something we obviously would look into if we go this route with these vehicles. So this is where we came up with the cost. Some people want to know like the CNG versus diesel. If you take, we ran 90 miles a day times 4 days a week, because we pick up trash 4 days a week, and then Fridays we pick up yard waste. You get 360 miles per week. If you take the 360 miles times 52 weeks in a year, you come up with 18,720 miles per year. If you do that, divided by the 1.9 miles per gallon, you came up with 9,852.63 gallons of CNG. We took that times 2. From talking to everybody, they said if you use the number, use around $2 a gallon, because you have to consider in your maintenance of your facility, getting it there and everything. So they've all come to find that You could use the 123, what the current rate is, but they said your numbers will be skewed if you do that. So you need to use closer to 2. And then, so based on that, we're going to spend around $19,705.26 per year with CNG on fuel. On the diesel, we did the same thing with the diesel. Divided by the 2.2 for the estimated miles per gallon, we get 8,509 gallons. You take that times the current diesel price, I believe it's went down a hair bit, but just average 3.75. You get $31,909.10 per year. So you see there is quite a bit of difference there in the price of the diesel versus CNG. On the next slide.
And that's per truck, right?
Yes, sir, that's per truck. So on the next slide, you see, okay, our diesel truck cost for that one truck in fuel minus the CNG cost for the one truck in fuel. So you get a savings of $12,203.83 per year. If you take our $47,398 for the CNG, for the additional CNG upgrade to the truck, you get, the $12,203.83 savings per year. If you divide that, then you get the 3.83 years return for investment before you make up that initial investment money. So about 4 years, which seemed to be about what everybody had. Some people had 4.1, some people had 4.5, so it seemed like we were right in the ballpark of what everybody else was experiencing with getting the return on investment. Return on investment with maintenance, some people said, well, you have to figure in also the spark plugs and the oil change. So we did that just so we have everything out there. You take the 12,000, if you minus the 900 for the 4 oil changes a year, because you need those every 500 hours. Then you minus the 500 for the 4 spark plugs, or the 6 spark plugs that you replace every year. You came up with $10,803.83 savings per year. If you divide that by the initial investment, then you get 4.387 years to return on investment. So that's probably where people were getting the 4.4 number. The CNG facility in Miami, this is what everybody that had CNG, they could not stress strongly enough, which we found very interesting, that if the city chooses to go CNG, then they need to have either a facility that they run themselves or that they lease to somebody to run, or that they have oversee, because they said when they started, one of the cities that started, they did not have their own facility, and they said the community invested all this money in these new CNG trucks. Well, the one place in town broke down, so things were not very good when their trucks could not run.
Do you have any cost estimates?
Yes, sir, which we're going to get into. Okay. A lot of cities, they're going into like New Solutions. They lease out to another company that comes down and put in the facility. This is actually a New Solutions facility. Those are all slow fill lines right there. So they plug their trucks in at night. They fill up. On the next slide, you can see. Okay, so some different options we have to do this. We can install a low flow facility at solid waste transfer station for a cost of $20,000 to $30,000, or we can also install a fast fill station at the same site or another site. Which we thought this would be kind of interesting, because if people are going to CNG, why not put something somewhere in the community that everybody could use? The City of Grove, I believe from reading in the paper, they recently put one in that they actually do, where they went in partners with another company and they split the revenue that it produces. From talking to NEO, they said they were probably 2 years out on doing a CNG. I think it'd be neat if we could do something with NEO and Pelivan possibly, and even possibly sell to the
I know we talked about Pelivan last time, and then it just so happened the next day I saw an article talking about their CNG facility in where their headquarters is. And so I didn't know to infer from that they were not then going to do one here, because that's a relatively new facility.
I believe the guy that did the facility in Tulsa, I believe he did their facility, and he was also doing a couple facilities at the Turnpike in Veneta and a couple other locations, but he did not say anything about that there had been any talk of doing one in Miami.
And then the college, I knew, I didn't hear 2 years, I heard 5 the other day when they were talking.
I talked to them today, and they said that at least 2 years out. They haven't even gotten to the funding
2.
stage of it yet. So,
Yeah.
But they said they'd be very interested, especially if the city, went this route, because they could speed up their process. So. The slow fill, you can see the trucks backed in there. They're filling up overnight. That was just one of the trucks they had left in there. You get the black stacks there. That is where the CNG tanks actually sit on the trucks. Okay. So the possible options, so you can use the fast fill station. And then, like I said, one of the cities lease to own. There's a bunch of different routes you can go if that's of some interest. Here's a fast fill station. This is what they had at the place in Tulsa. They had fast fill and slow fill. This is a fast fill. Another thing they brought up about using someone else's facility is this big truck comes in here and he gets 75 diesel gallon equivalent of CNG. Well, how CNG operates, you have your compressor. The compressor pumps to storage tanks, then the storage tanks pump to the vehicle. Well, if this big truck comes in here and fills up, then he empties out all the storage tanks. So in essence, after the next big truck pulls in, the compressor is just pumping directly from the compressor to the truck. I mean, just with us standing there, it probably took 15 to 20 minutes, maybe even closer to 25 to fill that big truck up with CNG. And they have two 200 horsepower motors that were pumping.
And was that from the storage tank or straight from the compressor?
That was from the storage tank. Nobody had been there, and they said, hey, look, they hollered at the guy, hey, pull the truck in here. We want to show the guys, you know, just kind of what it does. And it plugs in right in the front. You can see it where it plugs in the front there. The trucks that we were looking at, they'd actually plug in on the side, but and then they just fill up. There's actually the two compressors back there. This is their facility. You have the two compressors that compress the fuel. And then to the left of the slide, which you can't see, there is where their storage tanks are. There was some talk about, okay, what facilities do we need to work on CNG trucks? This was kind of something that we just went out there and read about, and from talking to everybody. The National Fire Protection Agency kind of regulates what you have to have in your shops to work on these. And a lot of the difference was if you're a major shop or a minor shop. So are you just coming in there to do oil changes? Then it was kind of, you would be designated a minor shop. If you're a major shop, then, you know, you'd be doing engine replacements, larger things like that. So the main things that we've noticed, and from talking to everybody, that we'd have to do, we have to have your ventilation rates must be increased, so that way if there's ever is a leak of any CNG, it would be dissipated out of the building. You have to have a gas detection system installed, so you could have, you know, a monitor go off if there's gases. And then heaters must be located a certain distance from the vehicles, because, you know, you could have a live flame. And then I believe the guy brought up that you have to have a blast-proof building. That is more if you park the truck overnight or if the trucks are left there long-term, which I'm sure they see because, you know, they're doing
Left
major.
there filling.
Do what, sir?
Left there filling?
No, left there
just-
like overnight, like the truck comes in to work on it and they don't get everything done, so they leave it
Okay.
there.
Okay. The maintenance.
Yes, sir. This is, like I said, where the tanks are located at. You can see each one of the tanks there. So you can actually just put you can turn them on and off. Then we talked about, there was a question brought up about the ordinance for parking. So we talked to various cities about different ordinances they have. And there was a lot of different answers on what people did. Some people made it where you couldn't park on the street that day. Other cities where, you know, they actually pull their cart into the street. So that way people couldn't park there in front of their cart because the cart was in the street, which was kind of an interesting technique. Just from talking to them, people need to at least be 6 or 7 feet away from the can, because if you think about it, the arm goes in there, the arm's opened up like this. It's opened up as wide as it can go. So it goes in there, then squeezes down, grabs the cart, pulls it back, and then dumps it. So they said at least you need 6 or 7 feet, and they said probably within 2 or 3 months the guys will get good enough where they can do that. But, you know, starting out, they said you definitely want to make sure to have some space between them. And they said it was kind of one of those things that they had to work through it, because there were some areas that they had to make changes to, because there were some areas that had smaller streets or no places to park, and they said they kind of just took it as a case-by-case basis. Like I said, some cities even have the carts placed in the street with the wheels against the curb.
Is that necessary, Tyler?
No, but that city found that very helpful, because they said when they had people put them out by the street, people still parked in front of them. And so you'd go by, and with the trucks, they'll have a camera on them that you can see that there's a vehicle there. Well, they would say, we didn't pick up your can because there was a white Mazda there. And they said, well, that's not my white Mazda. So they could run the tag and figure out whose car it was, and it was be their neighbors. Well, they said, so they figured out that when they pulled the can, as you can see with the wheels against the curb, that people didn't park next to him. So
You're saying with the the cart out in the street, basically, no one can parallel park there.
Yes, sir.
And so you can access it.
That-
When it's
that-
sitting up on the sidewalk, they can still
That,
park in front of it.
I mean, and everybody kind of has a funny story when they started going this route because of all the working out the kinks for doing this. So, actually, the city of Tulsa, the new way that does it, they actually have counters in their trucks. So everywhere they run that has a vehicle in front of it, they hit a number and it sends it back to the office saying there was a vehicle in front of here. And so if you want to get your trash picked up, then they charge $5 to come back and pick it up. They also talked about the ordinance for bag trash. So purchase another container, which a lot of cities, whenever they said we went to no bag trash, so we went, but we lessened the price for our second container, just so people would be able to afford easily 2 containers, 7 bag trash. Some people went to having a city issued sticker, but with printers and everything today, they said they found that they have a certain hologram sticker they put on, but people were copying their stickers and putting them and selling them. So.
Counterfeit trash bags.
As you see here, this is the bids. We are the best one we like is Waste Research out of Pryor. From talking to everybody and Kevin, I believe every truck they have out there is from Waste Research right now. And anytime we ever have any issue with them, he comes out. They come out and work on them, or we send them to him and he gets them right in.
Tyler, the comparison you did early on, the ROI equation, was based on 300,000 purchase price. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That was the 41,000 for the CNG cost plus the extra 6,000 for the warranty for the two.
So it's really based on the CNG.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So then, is it safe to say that in the non-CNG, it's closer to break even, the personnel savings versus the purchase of the equipment? Well, it would have to be closer, but I don't know that it's at 0.
No, it would be easier. I mean, it would, like you said, it'd be less. But my figure was based on 5 years, so everybody operates these trucks 7 or 8 years, so that's where they kind of see the savings at.
And the same thing holds true with your CNG equation. The kind of the break even you did came out to around 4.4 years,
Yes, sir.
whatever. And the real argument is if you're in your 5th, 6th, or 7th year, that's where you start to see the savings on the CNG.
Yes, sir. And they said, and then you have to figure on if you want to get more complicated, then you figure on those trucks still have pretty good value even at year 7 or 8 because a lot of people out there run their own personal route that are interested in buying these trucks, and they said they usually sell those to those individuals. And
I would think though that probably the diesel would have there'd be a higher demand for the diesel than CNG.
yes, sir. As of right now, I would say for sure.
And my biggest concern was the maintenance.
Yeah.
I think we're still too far away from we're not in a major metropolitan area where you can,
I've
talked to a trucking company and they're not even, it was gonna cost them $150,000, Kenworth and Joplin, and they're not gonna do it right now for one bay.
I think you're right that the trucks are going to last longer than 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that I'm intrigued by is letting the college lead the way, and then 4 or 5 years from now, as some of our then diesel trucks start to age out, that we would look at maybe
Going that route?
at that time going that route. That's kind of what's going through my head. I mean, I understand the economics of it, but that's kind of.
And staff doesn't have any recommendations as far as diesel versus CNG. Our recommendation was just Waste Research because of the history and everything they have to offer.
So does everybody accept the ROI is there on the truck purchase, the trade-off of the employees versus the savings of employees versus the cost of the vehicles? I guess would be the first question we need to answer for ourselves.
Yeah, I think it's no question it needs to be done.
I don't think a lot can happen in a year, just like the last meeting we talked, you'd mentioned about for the commercial ones.
Yes, sir.
You can look at that again in a year, on them items, whether you wanna go diesel or, but these two, yeah.
But you you agree with staff's recommendation to purchase, is it 2 trucks? Is that what we're
Two.
talking about? 2
Yeah.
trucks,
I agree with two.
the diesel trucks.
If that's what they recommended.
Yes, sir.
And Jeff, I think the point you were making earlier was, we're not going to eliminate 2 positions. So it's not like there's gonna be a pure savings there. Those staff would be reallocated to better perform other tasks for the taxpayers. Is that
Well,
fair characterization?
no, sir, if we were at 17, we're down to 11 now from the early retirements. We've realized the savings. We may have a couple extra people, but we've been filling in with employees from the labor pool and by hiring temps. So
Okay.
we've already realized the savings and have been doing that for some time, but we've been backfilling. And I guess we've been experiencing an opportunity cost
Okay.
because those employees have been dealing with sanitation rather than dealing with potholes and water main breaks.
So then there would be a real savings, a dollar savings, a hard cost savings in not hiring temps where we've had to do so. And then the other savings would be reflected as an opportunity cost, being able to do other services, other things with taxpayers.
It also takes the employees out of the inclement weather. I mean, if there's ice on the ground, they're not out there slipping and
Yes, sir.
sliding, pushing the carts around if it's raining, and that takes them out of that type of situation.
Well, and Tyler touched on it earlier, you know, you're more have accidents and lost time due to accidents. That's got to figure in the equation.
It's hard to put a dollar
Yeah.
value on it, but nonetheless, it's an intangible savings for sure.
And then, if I may, the other impact is we've been running on our roads with these heavy trucks on single axle for a very long time. And there is unquestionably a relationship between weight of a truck and the durability of the pavement, especially in wet weather. So these trucks go to add an axle, which they're gonna be heavier by truck because they hold more, but they'll distribute that weight better because there'll be extra axles.
What is the weight on that truck empty, and what is the gross weight?
That I do not know. I knew that at one time, but I don't want to say a number.
Will this affect our services in picking up the trash since we're going down the street, turning around, coming back? We can still do it just as quick and
Yes, sir.
efficiently.
They have the people that do it for a living, they said it's sped up their process.
It's even faster.
Yes, sir.
That's
A lot
great.
faster.
Yeah, this is the first community that I've worked in 15 years that is still manually hauling a can to the truck. Almost everywhere else has gone to these automated systems. And to me, one of the telltale factors is when you look at what the private sector is doing in waste management, they're almost exclusively gone to this model. So I think the history has shown that this is very usable. The only thing I can say from personal experience is that there's 2 things. One, you don't want to tether your bulldog near the trash can. And you don't want to put your trash can near your mailbox because it will certainly take the top right off of your mailbox.
Which kind of begs the question, whichever direction you go, in a relatively, reasonable response time, I'll be back before you proposing some kind of parking ordinance. And I'd simply encourage you to be thinking in terms of how you think your constituents might respond to that. There will have to be, I would assume there would be, some penalties. If we don't have some kind of penalties in place for it, it's not going to work.
I think when we looked at the actual operation of the truck, though, it's pretty remarkable how agile the arms are at getting in between vehicles. And if you're placing the can actually on the street rather than off of the curb, based on the video that we've seen of the trucks that are operating, I don't know how serious a problem that would be. And we could cross that bridge when we get to it, rather than foisting some additional regulations on, or off the bat. Otherwise, I'll have a mass outbreak of Facebook posts, so.
How will we effectively communicate those changes? I mean, will we use the newspaper?
We figured we'd use the newspaper, utility bills, the radio. Just give it to Amanda.
And I know you probably said this in the last meeting, and I forgot, Tyler, what's the time frame of these being in operation?
Probably 3 to 4, maybe 5 months. It just kind of depends. Sometimes they have a truck in the factory that they'll just get down, that they're getting ready to sell to somebody. They haven't have it sold yet, so they can take one of those. It just kind of depends. But they were thinking 3 to 4 to 5 months.
3 months minimum.
And refresh my memory on our current containers. We have to retrofit those?
No, on the retrofit, that would be if we go with the front loader for our commercial routes. Our
Okay.
current plastic is that's what they're designed to do.
Okay.
So from the time that we purchase these trucks, we have time to get the parking
Yes,
ordinances
ma'am. That's
figured
what I
out
thought was
and
after we
get
go this route, then we can
the
start.
communication taken care of. And maintenance for the diesel trucks isn't an issue.
No, I mean our maintenance crews, the 2 mechanics that we have, I mean they can rebuild diesel
We can take
engines.
care of
They
everything.
rebuilt 2 diesel engines last year, so that's their specialty. I mean they do that. So.
Any other questions? Well, staff has a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Before you proceed, remind me, please, Tyler, is the recommendation for the low bidder or not for the low bidder?
Second.
I'd simply encourage you, and it's my duty to tell you that under Oklahoma law, if you approve a bid that's not the low bid, it's required that your motion and disposition of the bid, include a statement as to why you're not going with the low bid. Something that it could be a statement made by Tyler that the moving trustee adopts, but it's got to be included in the motion and approval if you're not going to go with the absolute low bid. And I don't mean to imply that it's a problem. It's just a requirement of law.
Can you refresh our memory on
Yes,
why
sir.
you
Just from
chose
talking
that?
to the cities that run them, their main like is that the arm is actually attached to the frame on these trucks versus to the body. If you think about that arm reaching out 4,000 times a week, that's a lot of force on that body. Well, these trucks, they mount them on the frame, so the frame's the strongest part of the vehicle, so they like that. The arm reaches longer on these vehicles. Plus as far as any issues we ever had, this company that we would like to purchase from, they've always been there to take care of us.
So you think the engineering design is superior and their past experience working with the company has been very positive?
Yes, sir. It's been
Okay.
nothing but positive.
And what was the difference per truck?
You have to pull it up on
A
that.
few thousand, I think.
Yeah. It's like 30,000, wasn't it?
The low was downing at 244, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Tyler? And you're recommending waste research at 251, so
Oh, okay, so-
approximately 7,000,
Okay.
7,600 per truck, for 2 trucks. And again, the recommendation, just to be clear, is to purchase 2 trucks, correct? 2 automated side loaders.
Which would be option A.
Okay, then I'm gonna go ahead and make the motion that, now you've confused me, here we go. To award bid number C14-07, option A, 2 diesel automated side loader trucks to Waste Research Incorporated, based on the fact that we think, our staff recommends Waste Research because they think the engineering design is superior and their past experience with the company has been exceptional.
I'll second that.
Roll call.
Schultz,
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
McLean,
Aye.
Weston,
Aye.
Charlotte.
Aye.
Thank you, Tyler.
Thank
had
you
the
very,
trucks.
very,
That's
very
good.
much.
Good
Good
work,
job.
Tyler.
Good
Good
job.
work.
Good job. Item number 10, other new business, if any, which has arisen since the posting of the agenda. Any new business? Item number 11, excuse me. Item number 12, trustee community announcements. Do we have any announcements from any of the trustees?
I'll wait till the council meeting there.
Okay. Item 13, staff reports. Written reports, if any, were included in your packet, and staff is available for questions if we have any.
Nothing, Chairman.
Item number 14, adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion adjourned.
Second.
I thought
Roll
Chris
call,
would be all
please.
over that.
Charlotte.
Aye.
Weston.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
McLean.
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye. We are adjourned, and if there's no objection, we're gonna move right into our council meeting. So I will call to order the regular meeting of the Miami City Council for Tuesday, December 17th at 5:30 PM, immediately following the SUA meeting. Item number 2 is public input and unscheduled personal appearances. Are there any members of the audience that want to speak to the council on any of the agenda items? There being none, we'll move the consent agenda. Staff is recommending items 4 through 13 for approval. I believe that a couple of those items staff is recommending be pulled out. Neil, did you have a list of those?
Yes, Mayor, I'd make a motion to approve 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11, 12, and 13. If there's no objections, and I would like to pull out items 9 and 10 for discussion.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve all the items on the consent agenda with the exception of items 9 and 10. Do we have a second, please?
Second.
Roll call?
Johnson,
Aye.
Weston.
Aye.
Sharbutt,
Aye.
McLean,
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye. Okay, items 9 and 10 will be taken in the regular order on the agenda, so we're going to move to item number 4, approval of the minutes. Well, excuse me, that was on the consent agenda,
Right.
so we will take item 9 next. Item 9 reads approve and authorize city manager to sign GH2 project work order number 05 for a design on City Hall on proposed site. Chuck Childs?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm not Chuck Childs. I'm going to go ahead and handle this one tonight because Chuck didn't
Okay.
know I was going to do this. So I requested that these items be pulled off of the consent calendar primarily due to our monitoring of the Facebook chatter from today, and we wanted to provide some additional information on what's going on. It may come as a surprise to some, but this is not a new subject. We've been working on this issue for a little over a year. We first started discussing some challenges with this building prior to the election on the sales tax extension for the stadium project, because we didn't want to have this issue come up after that process and have people say, well, you didn't tell us before you had the sales tax election, so we discussed it. And I just want to kind of refresh everyone's memory about what that dialogue was like and why we are at this point. This is not the first contract that the city has considered with GH2. We did execute a contract with them last year to do some space planning and get a handle on what the city really needs for space from an administrative standpoint and in the police department. The reason why we initiated that project is because this building has some serious flaws. We have a leaky roof. You can come in on any given day and see trash cans in the hall trying to catch the rainwater. We have a very old ballasted roof. We also had some employee concerns regarding the smell of mold in the building. We had an industrial hygienist come in and do an analysis, and we do indeed have mold in this building. We have a very faulty heating system. Each time it comes on, you're blasted with the remnants of 50 years of operation from an oil boiler that's down in the basement, and quite frankly, something that Freddy Krueger would be proud to haunt. It's riddled with asbestos. So the process that we started going through was making a list and inventory of those repairs and what they were going to cost. And it didn't take us long before we started getting into some very serious money. In fact, just based on some quotes, the lowest range was a little bit under $600,000. The highest was over $600,000, almost $700,000. And that was just for addressing those specific issues. So at that time, when we were having that dialogue with the council started asking questions, is it really wise to reinvest that kind of money into this building, given its age, given the fact that this building's been added on too many times? So there really was this fundamental question about feasibility, whether or not it was a wise expenditure of money to reinvest those funds, because doing the things that are on that list don't make this a Class A building. They basically are a patch to extend the life of the building for some time. They don't do anything about the antiquated wiring in it. They don't do anything about the loss of energy efficiency with the third story on the building that's not being used. The only insulation between it and the floor that's being heated is some insulation that's been thrown on top of the ceiling tile. We've got conduit run to all over the building in places, the years of additions that have been made. We have people working in closets. the building itself is from a professional facility manager standpoint, almost functionally obsolete. Yes, we could squeeze out a few more years. This process has not been rushed. Again, we started it over a year ago. We haven't been in a real hurry. The problem that we're running into right now is that the leaks in the roof are getting worse. And at some point in time, we're going to have to address that. And that's going to be a six-figure solution. So one of the original task orders of the architect was to take a look at our needs. Sadly, we got sidetracked with other projects and other requirements, and we're just now able to get back to it. Tonight's projects are to analyze, and if you recall, some time back I did a presentation where I disclosed to the public that I'm a rock turner. I will turn over a rock and see what's under it. This is a rock turning exercise. In order for us to put together good information to determine whether or not it's a good decision to make an investment in it, we need to explore what the alternatives are. We don't have an architect on staff. Chuck will be the first one to tell you that his PE is in civil engineering, and civil engineering and architecture are not the same thing. So to answer the questions, why couldn't you just have the city engineer do it? It's not the same thing. We want to have a high level of confidence that the estimate we get for our alternatives is credible. If I recall, this was even one of the criticisms of the city early on in the street project, is that we did not have professionals looking at the situation and giving us advice early on. So we're being diligent. The two options that we're looking at tonight is to do a cost analysis, a rough order of magnitude analysis for what it would take to renovate a building downtown for administrative offices and to accommodate the police department in a former bank building. The two scenarios that we have envisioned in this is basically a blending of two diametrically opposed concepts. The first one would be to take a low-priced building that likely will take quite a bit of renovation, but is considerably smaller than this complex, to see how cost-effective it is compared to reinvesting in this building. And in the second scenario, which is the second issue that's going to be proposed tonight, we will take a building that requires very little work, but probably has a much higher value, and determine what the total cost is to utilize that. In this scenario, we're going to split the police department away from the city. There is very little synergy between the police department and City Hall being in one location. And we're even going to look at taking some of our core functions like engineering and building and move that into the public works complex, where there is synergy, where you've got engineers talking to people that are working with infrastructure, and separate them and allow us to all go to a smaller, much smaller footprint, which theoretically would save us considerable amount of money in utilities. Even though the city of Miami is a utility provider, we are not a utility producer. We are still paying for all of the power that is used at City Hall and for the heat and the energy that's used here. So we want to take a look at what the cost comparisons would be between reinvesting in this building or renovating two existing buildings to meet our needs, plus then relocating some functions to another building. There will be a third phase to this, and that will be when we look at raw construction numbers to look at building a new building from scratch. And the whole purpose behind this exercise is to carefully consider what the options are to prevent a quick decision being made when we're talking about such substantial funds. We haven't even got to the point where we can start doing a time value of money comparison to the options because we don't have enough information at this point in time. I regret that we weren't able to do this quickly when we first started the project. Unfortunately, we're not masters of our own calendar. We're not masters of the issues that we have to deal with. I won't need to remind you of the challenges that we had over the summer. Unfortunately, we just weren't able to get to it. So we're moving methodically. So the issues tonight that are before the council are one, to basically to approve and authorize the city manager to sign a project work order number 5 with GH2 to look at a renovation of a building located at 17 North Main, which is the former crisis center downtown. It is a vacant building, and this would be an adaptive reuse of the building. Our intent is to encourage the architect to look at the historical presence of the building downtown, not the current reiteration, which is a storefront that was rebuilt after a fire, but to try to recapture the historic importance of the building in accordance with the Main Street program. Staff will visit with the site with the architect. They will look at the structural integrity of the building. They will also develop a sketch layout and will provide us with some basic cost estimates for what we're looking at. So we're looking at an opportunity for something to compare with the cost it will take to reinvest in this building. I know that to address some of the concerns that we saw today, yes, there was a facelift placed on this building. I recall the figure for that cost was, excuse me?
About $40,000.
About 40,000. So we're talking that the costs that are required of us at this point in time to deal with this building are substantially more than that. So we recognize that that would be a stranded cost, but we won't know whether or not that's a wise decision until we've looked at all of the potential alternatives that we have available to us. So in accordance with that, staff is requesting authorization for myself to enter into this project work order. We don't have to have a new contract with GH2. They're already under contract with the city. This would just be a new task order. So staff is requesting authorization for that authority tonight.
We're only talking about agenda item 9 right now, correct?
Yes, sir.
Just-
Your Honor, if I may, I just also want to add that this in no way, shape, form, or fashion ties us into a specific decision. This is not a decision. This is simply analysis at this point. It will cost us money, but we're talking about a substantial investment any way we go. And in my opinion, it's worth spending this money to do the analysis to make sure you're not making a bad decision in choosing one of those options.
Do you have an estimated cost associated with item 9?
It was 7,000, wasn't it, Chuck?
7,000, and there's $1,800 for the structural analysis, so potential of $8,800. And again, it's an hourly. They get into it, and it takes less hours. Great, but they're only authorized up to that amount.
Okay. Well, I just want to reiterate, I know some of the council members weren't here a year ago or a year and a half ago even when some of these conversations first occurred, but this has been a subject of discussion for a long period of time, and it did get put on the back burner. But if we're going to make informed decisions about this facility, remodeling facilities, potentially a new facility, and spending the taxpayers' dollars, we need to have information to do that with. And so I certainly support moving forward with item number 9. Any questions? I know Christie.
No, based on what Jeff just explained, it seems to me to make sense to go
Okay.
forward with the study.
Will we be able to utilize this building as far as the gym and some of its?
We're way ahead of those kinds of decisions because we haven't decided that this, you haven't come to the point where you decided that this isn't, but you have a lot of options. You could try to save the gymnasium. You could attempt to save the public meeting space. The biggest problem is that even if you do that, you're going to have a considerable cost because the majority of the roof is over the public meeting space. The roof is not in question over the gymnasium. It's a different construction type. But the infrastructure in it is not exceptionally well either. The plumbing in it is old. Even the heating in it is old.
It is separate heating, but
It is. There's a separate unit in that building, and I couldn't tell you right off the top of my head whether the boiler has any impact to it or not. I would encourage you all to look at the boiler. It was intimidating. It's the first time I'd actually been down there today when I showed it to the TV station. But, those are decisions that you can factor in. We're not ready to even bring a recommendation to you.
I understand. I'm just trying
As
to
what to
anticipate
do
some
is because
questions.
we don't know the answer to this question. Is it cheaper to break us up into smaller units and find something smaller and reuse something that exists? And then we're going to ask the question, is it cheaper than to build something? What they can do with metal buildings these days is remarkable. But there is no free option. Nothing that can go on forever. How is it? Nothing that can't go on forever. Everything that must come to an end that can't go on forever. That's the quote I was looking for. And you have enjoyed the lifespan of this building. You know, I can't do anything about the maintenance of the building for the last 30 years, but I can only tell you now that you're looking at some costs. And we're not real sure how to advise you on what to do about those costs until we've had an opportunity to look at where all the different alternatives are. Just like with the exhaustive analysis that we've done on these trash trucks, we are very concerned about what we spend money on. Rather than making a hasty decision about it, I would encourage everyone to open your mind and let us explain what we're trying to do, and hopefully you'll understand what the method is behind the madness.
Your point is, it's not a question of whether or not we're gonna spend money, it's just a question of how we're gonna spend it.
What's the wisest?
Man.
What's the time frame on this part of the project?
We're hoping probably January.
Yeah, they, with the holidays, they're, make it done in a couple weeks to a month, you know, so expect in January's meeting, we come back with some kind of.
With something.
The advantage to using an architect to do this kind of analysis is that this is what they do day in and day out. It's not hard for them to give you an estimate of what it's going to cost. They want to go in and look at it. The structural thing is the big thing because, you know, once you start peeling away sheetrock and looking at the structure, that can run into big money. But this building, and I've toured it, it's not that complicated. It's a rather simplistic space. I mean, it's big open area, so we anticipate the costs are going to be as low as you possibly could. It's a good building for you to take a look at this particular option and get a cost estimate on it. And then the credit union building is likewise a very good alternative. From what I understand, I haven't had a chance to tour it myself, it's almost as if it's just been in stasis. I mean, it's still got all of the office furniture in it.
Yes, that is correct.
So, and then on the flip side of this is just to go ahead of this, we have been hoarding office furniture. We were fortunate, Scepter, when they took over the Blitz operation, we got all of their surplus office furniture. We've been storing that. We've got cubicles. Cable One closed their office in Joplin. They gave us everything they had surplus, so we brought a huge truck over full of office furniture. So we've been trying to approach this as prudent and as efficient as we possibly can.
Joe, did you have any questions? Okay, we are looking for a motion on item number 9.
Motion to approve.
And a second, please.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Sherman?
Aye.
Weston?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
McLean?
Aye.
Schultz?
Aye. Item number 10, approve and authorize city manager to sign GH2 project work order number 6, Design City Police Department on proposed site, which you've already touched on, Jeff. Do you want to add anything to
No,
what
just
you
just
said?
to recap, Your Honor, this is basically the converse of the former proposal. This is a building that shouldn't require a lot of work. The cost would be in the acquisition of the building, and this is a little bit different work, but they still need to go in and take a look at it because the biggest cost will be in relocating 911. The beauty of this particular building is it does have a full basement, so emergency management would be able to go into the basement along with dispatch. Would improve our safety from a tornado standpoint. I don't hope and everyone is aware of the fact that our emergency dispatch for the entire county 911 system is in a building that is susceptible to storm damage. So if a twister took out communications, we would be in pretty bad shape. So this particular building, we think, has the ability for us to put that in a safe environment and would not require a lot of work. So,
Is that something, Jeff, that in some conversations in the past that the county could be more involved in too on the 911?
well, the county 911 is handled by a district. It's not handled by the county. The sheriff's office, we do have a very good working relationship with them. We get more benefit out of the county's cooperation, the fact that they're not charging us jail services. So we feel very confident that the taxpayers getting good value between the counties and the city's relationship in public safety.
But But the region does it extend beyond
It does.
Ottawa County?
No, sir. Well, does it
And
Delaware?
all this-
We don't do Delaware.
What cities are involved?
All the cities in.
Ottawa County, right?
And then my police department is referred to as what they call a PSAP, Public Safety Answering Point for the county, under the direction of the 911 board. The Ottawa County Sheriff's Office chooses to dispatch their own calls. So when a 911 call comes in, it comes in here. Our dispatchers will answer. If it happens to be, say, a call out by Shawnee Grocery, they literally will push the call to the sheriff's office dispatchers, and they'll assign their own personnel. But currently, we're dispatching for right at 28 entities. Quapaw Tribal EMS, Quapaw Fire, Downstream Fire, all the volunteer fire departments. We actually, we have a good working relationship with the 911 board, but we are in fact designated since 1992 as the PSAP for the county.
Thank you.
Chief, would you, for my information and everybody else's, if you haven't been in that police department, would you give the size of that?
Can you come to the mic, Chief? Thank you.
Could you give us about the size of that office space they handle the calls?
This particular one?
Yes.
I actually measured it today for Liz Holiday. It's 132 square feet. It's 132 square feet. We have 2 dispatchers on shift at all times. The other day, when we had the issue with the signal light being struck by the tractor trailer truck, we actually had to bring an officer to come in because we were getting so many 911 calls on it. Our average call load in a year, calendar year, is about 48,000 calls.
Wow.
So very busy, and it's 132 square feet. If I measured right, it's like 11 feet by 12 feet. The consoles are outdated. Originally, when this was constructed, it was actually constructed only for one dispatcher. But at that time, also, we weren't a PSAP. We were only dispatching for the Miami Police Department, Miami Fire Department. But when we assumed the PSAP status, when we started dispatching, so we had to add a second dispatcher and a second console. And as anyone can see, it's very cramped in there. It's not a good working environment for our safety personnel, public safety personnel.
I agree. Mayor, I just think this is something that has to be addressed pretty quick. That's just
So-
my opinion.
You make a motion then for item number 10 to,
I will.
okay.
Motion to approve.
And a second.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Johnson,
Aye.
McLean,
Aye.
Weston,
Aye.
Charbot,
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye. Okay, that item is approved. We are going to move now to item number 14. Approve mayor's signature on ordinance changing section designations of solid waste codes. David?
At sometime, I think back in 2008, somebody on the outside, I didn't draft it, drafted a solid waste, a set of solid waste ordinances. And when they picked the numerical designations for those ordinances, they picked the same numerical designations as some ordinances that were already in effect. So the net result is we ended up with 2 sets of ordinances, all of which remained in full force and effect, but which shared numerical designations. I was asked to draft an ordinance that would fix those numerical designations. I did that. That's what's before you. I didn't go back and try to revise the ordinances, update them, make any substantive changes of any kind whatsoever. The content remains identical. And I'll tell you that some of that content has a little bit of obsolescence in it in terms of, the words used. But I'm told that it's really important that there be clarity with the staff when they refer to these ordinances. And so I accommodated that request, and for the time being, I've proposed that the council simply redesignate the numbers attached to those ordinances, with the anticipation that at some time in the future, staff associated with solid waste may come back and recommend and request some other changes, but one thing at a time.
Okay, seems pretty straightforward. Do we have a motion?
Motion approved.
Second, please.
Second.
Roll call.
Weston,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Charbot,
Aye.
McLean,
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye. Request for emergency clause, it looks like.
Just the recommendation from myself would be that you do so simply to avoid any public misperception or misunderstanding about the codification.
Okay, I'll
So-
make that motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Schultz,
Aye.
Sharbutt,
Aye.
Weston,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
McLean.
Aye.
Thank you. Looks like we have a series of nominations. First, approve mayor to sign amendment to the ordinance to provide mayoral nomination and council approval of board member and chairperson of the Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau. David, would you briefly explain what we're doing?
What I've provided for you, which I hope made it into your packet, somebody suggested earlier that they didn't see it, but I believe it is in there. The current CVB ordinance provides that the CVB advisory board has a chairman who presently has to be the mayor. I mean, the mayor is an ex officio member of that board and serves as its chairperson. What I've proposed to you in red line format is an amendment to that ordinance that would treat that position as one which could be filled by any council member upon a mayoral nomination and council approval.
And David has prepared this at my request. The CVB meets once a month. In the short period of time that I've been mayor, have not had an opportunity to attend a meeting yet because of conflicts. Although O'Neill has been there in my stead on several occasions, which I appreciate. And so I asked David to design this amendment so that, in fact, any designated councilman or nominated and approved councilman could serve in that position. So I'm asking for your approval of the ordinance first,
Make a motion to approve, Mayor.
and a second, please.
I second.
Roll call.
Johnson,
Aye.
McLean,
Aye.
Sharbutt,
Aye.
Weston.
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye. And then item 17 asks for an emergency clause for the same ordinance.
Motion
Uh,
approved.
And a second, please.
Second.
Weston,
Aye.
Sharbutt,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
McLean,
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye, thank you. Item number 18, direct the city attorney on course of action regarding paddlefish information request and Department of Wildlife Conservation agreement and/or approve proposed agreement. And so I think, David, they come back to us every year asking for us to renew an existing agreement, is that correct?
That is correct, Mayor.
Okay. And that agreement is before us, but before we approve it, I think there's been a few questions have arisen.
Yes, sir. And part of the question really requires or recommends that I ask you for some direction, if you want me to pursue some data. The city historically has had an ordinance that provided for a paddlefish permit out at Riverview Park. And several years ago, the state asked that the city accept some money, and typically it's a $5,000 disbursement from the state of Oklahoma. And in return, that you waive those paddlefish permit fees and close the cleaning stations near Riverview Park. That agreement is in furtherance of a scientific study that I understand to be ongoing by the state of Oklahoma. And one of the questions I asked was, well, why do they want us to close the cleaning stations? And my understanding, and I'm sure those that go spoon billing, would understand better than I do. I've always wanted to do it. I've never done it. That the state will actually clean the spoon bill for the fishermen and return the meat to them and dispose of the carcass. And that helps the state do certain things. Now, it's no great mystery. I don't know what all the state does. I attached some materials that I emailed to each of you last week that provide some information from the state on that program. I also attached an article from that I found online, International Game Warden magazine or something to that effect. Their summer 2013 issue actually has a big article on the particular challenges that face the state of Oklahoma and other states with regard to spoonbill. I mean, there's actually a pretty big market out there for illegal gathering, harvesting of spoonbill eggs. And that article even describes a sort of an Eastern European, almost mafia-sounding connection. So apparently the state's got a lot on its hands, more than we may realize, when it comes to husbanding the resource of spoonbill or paddlefish. Well, in the process of deciding what to recommend to the City Council regarding this proposed agreement renewal, staff made some phone calls. And on paper, it looked like this program generates considerable revenue, maybe 6-7 figure revenue for the state of Oklahoma Department of Wildlife. I don't know where the money comes from. I don't know how they get the money, and I know that I don't know. So we ask, and the responses received by staff, I think both Jill and I think Krista Duhan, the paralegal, were pretty strong rebuffs from Wildlife Department. They didn't want to provide the information, and they seemed, at least the persons that were talked to, a little put off that we even asked. So it's kind of hard for me to say and advise you on whether this $5,000 payment by the state is a fair payment or not, you know, or what it really represents. I don't know. I can't explain the economics to you. I can tell you that we have to be cautious because at the end of the day, we don't own the fish. The state of Oklahoma owns the fish. They don't have to pay us anything. That's something to keep in mind. And so the question at the end of the day is, do you want me to keep pressing for more information or not?
They harvest the eggs and they sell them to pay for the program.
Yes, sir.
That's what they do. I don't know what the number is either. We help them by not having the cleaning stations, because then that encourages the anglers to go and have their fish cleaned as opposed to cleaning them here. The cleaning stations, when they were here, if I remember, were kind of a headache. When this first, I was on the council very early on when this first came up, and I just remember being a new councilman, the other council members were like, oh my gosh, can we really get rid of these cleaning stations and still provide for the anglers an opportunity to get their fish cleaned and all that kind of stuff? And at the time, the council thought it was a good deal. I realize $5,000 in the context of a 6 or 7 figure number doesn't sound like much, but as you said, we have no real claim to the product anyway. I guess what I see us doing is stepping out of their way, being paid a small amount of compensation to do so, so that they can fund through the sale of the eggs the cost of the program of policing the wildlife. That's what it looks like to me.
Yes, sir. I think so too.
Is this a service they're gonna provide, or is it mandatory that the fish be taken to the cleaning station?
It's well, maybe others that can answer that question more effectively. I don't think it's required. I think it's
Just a service.
It's a service.
It's not mandatory. They'll come to the bank and get the fish and
Didn't know how
prepare it for
regulated
you.
it would be, yeah.
Well, there are some pretty strong regulations on what you do with the fish products once you clean the fish. There are laws that require that your permit, I call it a tag, be literally with that fish when you transport it. And that if you personally clean the fish, that the fish products for each angler be kept separate from the fish products of the other anglers. There are some pretty strong regulations about whether the roe or eggs that you may recover are deemed processed or not processed. And there have been people who have gotten in a lot of trouble for how they handle those things. So it seems to me that there's a pretty strong encouragement, not only in terms of convenience, but regulatory issues that I would think a lot of anglers might want to take advantage of it.
And it's not illegal to possess the eggs. It's illegal to possess over a certain quantity. And I read the article, and I don't remember what it was now, but 3 pounds, is that
Yes,
what
sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so, and I'm sure it's illegal to export them without the proper license. And that's what's happening, I think, is they're being exported however, without the proper license.
You might find the article interesting
was
if you get a
very
chance and want to look at it. So the question becomes, how far do you want me to take it? And I simply wanted to point out that not only do we not own the fish, we don't even own the shoreline. It's GRDA.
Who contacted us to do the 5,000 and who did we talk to?
Somebody from the Oklahoma Wildlife Department contacted the city, 5, 6, or 7 years ago originally when we had the cleaning stations, and they approached us with the idea of if we would eliminate the cleaning stations, they would provide the cleaning service and pay us a small stipend, if you will, also. And did we also, I can't remember if there was some grant money that came along to help clean up the banks of the river or do something. Joe, would you come up and speak to that if you can? I think there was something more than just the stipend.
Yeah.
I just don't remember what all it was.
They didn't promise money, but they talked about getting up to $15,000 a year.
That's exactly what it is, 15,000 if we apply for it, and they agree with it. It's 15,000. I believe it was either Brent Gordon, I believe, was the one that proposed it to the council.
They made a personal presentation here at the council the first year.
And have we applied for those funds in the past and used them, or are they matched them,
I
or whatever?
think that's part of what we're doing now with the RIPRAP program, but
That's
we're
right.
waiting. Like Counselor just said, we don't own that down there, so it's hard for us to make
Right.
improvements.
We're waiting for GRDA's
Exactly.
authorization to do the riffraff
Yes, sir.
work
Yes, sir.
that is funded in part by this $15,000.
Right.
So it's 5 plus 15.
They don't promise the 15, so if you sign the agreement, it's not an absolute promise.
Right.
But
It's a grant given it, you apply for it.
if the money's there, they try to send it our way.
And I'm pretty optimistic that if we can get GRDA's approval, that the money will be forthcoming.
We do too, yes.
That's what I thought. I mean, I got that sense from y'all, but
Yes, sir.
that's why I'm optimistic.
The only thing you're guaranteed is the 5,000, but the rest looks good.
So the alternative is to go back and say, we don't want your money, and we may or may not put the cleaning stations back up, and we potentially end up with a mess in the park.
Yes, sir.
Because that's kind of that's why we put the cleaning stations in, was because it was getting very messy down there.
Yes, sir.
So those are at least two alternatives. One is to approve the agreement again, the other is to not approve it, and
I don't have a problem approving the agreement. I think we ought to continue to work on a relationship with somebody down there. Whoever approached us, if they're still in there, we could talk
well, I think
to
that's
them.
what Joe and them were doing with some of the projects that they're talking about to improve the shoreline.
I think
and
that's,
everything.
continue to build a relationship there if we can.
So I would make a motion to, was this asking for my signature, or you read this before I make the motion? So we're just asking for approval of the agreement.
That's one of the options under the agenda item, which would entail the mayor signing it.
So I probably shouldn't make that motion.
You could, sir. It'd be
Well,
no
I'll
different.
make the motion that we approve the proposed agreement, which is basically a repeat of the agreement from last year.
Yes, sir.
Second it.
Roll call, please.
Schultz,
Aye.
Sharbit,
Aye.
Weston,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
McLean.
Aye.
Thank you. Item 19, discuss and direct staff on course of action regarding possible future general bond obligation, election, street improvements, pool rehab, new pool, new splash pad, or other, et cetera. Those are all just possibilities. Nothing's been decided. My name is next to that. Jeff, do you have thoughts you want to share on that process?
Well, sir, just for background information, the city's general obligation bond is expiring this year, and it has been the past practice to keep that levy reappropriated each time it rolls over, and it's something that only happens like once every, is it 10 years? So you have the opportunity to do that now. We have needs still. Clearly, the street improvements could probably go on for a few more decades. We have had a comprehensive review of the pool and have found that we've got some serious facility problems with the pool as well. As you recall, that study indicated there was about $4 million worth of improvements that need to take place to the existing pool. That study also indicated, to contrast that with the fact that building a brand new pool would be $2 million something. Is it in here?
So, well, not the pool, but
In the pool? To that end, staff needs some direction. We've kind of had this issue kicking around. We got derailed on this with the passing of Mayor Ketcher this summer. But there's almost an inexhaustible list of projects. Sadly, the reality is that the bond by law is going to be capped around the $2 million mark. So you're limited to a project that would be about $2 million.
And this GO bond is predicated on property tax?
It is
that
property
correct?
tax, correct.
So it'd be a property tax levy that's currently in place, and so we would continue that levy.
We would ask the voters to renew it,
Renew it.
and the theory is that it doesn't increase taxes because the levy's been there. Allowing it to lapse would eliminate it from the tax roll, but I couldn't tell you off the top of the head how many mills it is, but I don't imagine it's 3 mills. It's and whether or not it's substantial is relative and subject to perception, so I'm not going to comment on that.
Okay. So the goal would be to, if this council wants to ask the voters to renew the levy at 3 mills, then we would come up with a project list. Some of which are up here. Is that, Tim, can you put that on the screen? Thank you. Work on the soccer complex, pool rehab, which we've already talked about. It would be significant. It's almost cheaper to build a new pool. Well, the numbers we've seen would be cheaper to build a new pool. We've talked several times about a splash pad. We have applied for grants, have not been successful yet on that. Work on the tennis courts, the 911 site we've talked about earlier, potential of moving that already. That's going to be part of this analysis that we're doing with agenda item 10. Library expansion, emergency sirens, fire station roofs, rescue trucks, roads and bridges, etc. And we know we have a bridge problem. We're hoping that we're going to get a rebate, if you will, from ODOT on the original bridge project, thanks to the generosity of one of the tribes. We're going to get some money back and hopefully help us work on that Rockdale Bridge project. So I guess, Jeff, I'm not really sure. The last time we did this, I was not a member of the city government. I was just a citizen, and I served on a committee where we went through this process and selected projects and then took it to the voters. Do you see a similar process, or what do you recommend? Or does the council have an opinion on how we would proceed?
Well, staff doesn't have a recommendation. We certainly would encourage you to consider allowing citizen participation in the process. Our main purpose tonight was just to let you know that the clock is ticking,
Okay.
and if we want to preserve the levy and not have it lapse, then we need to get moving. I think we need to have an election by this fall.
So that's the only thing you're asking direction on tonight?
We're just asking direction on how do you want to start this process? How do you want to tee up the discussion on what should we do with it? Should we do it? Again, we don't want to make a recommendation to you on something. This is clearly a policy initiative and should be initiated by you.
$2 million we think is pretty much.
Right. You know, if you recall, early on in my tenure here, I did a presentation on the city's assessed value, and we've actually, through inflation, our assessed value as a community has shrunk over the decades since the 50s. So we are pretty much, we get little bumps each year, but it hasn't been significant enough that ironically it's fairly consistent with what it was 10 years ago when you did the last GO bond issue. So it's roughly the $2 million maybe 2 million and some change that would be available. And we're assuming that's after bond costs. So for example, in the pool scenario, it might be enough to build a new pool. And by the way, just to clarify so that people are trying to figure that out, the new pool would be much smaller than the existing pool. The existing pool is enormous. We recognize that there are sentimental attachments to that fact. We're well of that. We're not making any recommendations as a staff to that regard. But almost everything on that list you could do with the exception of rehabbing the existing pool. I'm assuming the bridge we're talking about is Rockdale, and we think we do have those funds secured to do Rockdale, so you can take that off the list. But certainly you have a multitude of roads in the community that you could put those funds towards. Perhaps the truck route, since the general obligation bond would be a project or a financing mechanism that would be appropriate for an arterial type road like that that's used by many people.
Well, I know when the street committee was looking at trying to prioritize the use of the funds from the last sales tax election, they were frustrated by the fact that the truck route was, to do it right, was quite costly. And they wanted to address it, but they were torn between addressing it or doing 8 or 9 other streets. And,
Yes.
and so,
But just like with City Hall, I mean, we must face the fact that at some point in time, the price is going to be due on our infrastructure. We are accumulating a comprehensive list of the infrastructure that's been, the maintenance that's been deferred on it over the years, and it's daunting. So, I mean, at some point in time, we have to address the truck route, just like any other.
Joe, Tyler, you may remember, I believe the truck route, if I remember right, was like 1.8 million or something like that.
It was 900,000 from Maine to the railroad track, which was about 4th Street, which was about half of it.
Yeah.
Did that include? That didn't include the drainage project that
No, sir.
we really
Drainage project on 3rd was 400,000, I believe.
Yeah, the drainage project off of the truck route is probably the most pressing issue because it would be foolhardy to make an investment in the truck route without fixing that drainage problem.
so can you guys come up with a number to take us from 4th Street on around also? And you mentioned an election in the fall. So, I mean, obviously, we're just about in the dead of winter, so we're talking about October or so.
I think that's the date, the last that we can get. Is it May?
May, that's what's on the PowerPoint. May 14th.
I stand
I'm
corrected.
sorry, I'm sorry.
May 14th.
Those are old minutes. I put those in the BA.
Oh, that's the
Earliest
earliest
was-
available date. Yeah, no. But I think in order for us, the way that bond counsel had told me was the fall before we would lose the ability to say that we're just continuing on the existing levy. And just so that no one comes back later and wants to quote me on very particulars, the levy fluctuates.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the fact that there's a city levy on there that we're talking about continuing.
I think that it bears, and I'm not gonna try to do it tonight, but it bears some education as to what a mill is and how small a mill actually is and the impact that it might have on the average home here. I would like to have some conversation about that next meeting.
Oh, we can certainly do that. A mill basically is 1 per 1,000.
1,000th.
1/1,000.
Right.
But mills are not all equal because it's the assessment process,
Right.
the value which you apply that to, that dramatically impacts what revenues produce. So from state to state, there are classification systems. Then there's market appraisal of the building. So I mean, it's not, we can say it's a 1/1000th, it's 1/1000th in Kansas, it's 1/1000th in Idaho, but it may not produce the same dollar
And
amount.
the assessments vary by county.
Yes, sir.
So, I'd like for you guys, staff, to come back with a little bit of information based on the median household value, some realistic number as to what the effect is of the 3 mil levy continuing. And then I would like all the council members to give some thought to the list that's up there. And if you could, and certainly consider other things that you might want to consider. We'll talk about this again next meeting, and then certainly if we're going to go forward, it's imperative that we involve a citizens committee in helping us establish what the priorities are. And
Jeff, could you get it may be too early, but can you give a cost on moving the 911 system?
We've done that number. Michael's not here. Do you remember what that number was, Chief? It was in the hundreds of thousands. It wasn't.
It's a moving target based on the existing equipment we have now and anything that would have to be, because we actually looked at it. I'm going to give you a broad figure because a little bit also has to do with what infrastructure needs would have to be upgraded in any existing facility moved to, somewhere between 60,000 and 100,000.
Okay.
I know it's a wide range, but
Yeah.
if everything went well and we could do it, 60,000 on the deep end, it might be as much as 95 to 100,000. But that's the broad range. It's going to be somewhere in between that range.
okay, thank you, Chief. So, staff's going to bring back some information for us to share with the public as to what the cost of continuing with this levy would be, and we're going to look to start prioritize projects and get citizen input involvement in that process. And we're certainly not making a decision tonight, but we'll also look to ask staff to bring us back some information on election dates, and we'll see what the next step is. Any other questions or comments?
I just had when would we have to decide for the election? What's the latest date?
It would depend on which election that you aim for, sir. There's a statutory requirement for
60
roughly.
for calling those, but we would have to figure out what days have been approved by the state, and they change those for some reason each year. I'm not sure what they are for this year.
It's fair to say there's certainly going to be one first Tuesday in April.
So, David, you'll, like you did, I don't remember which election it was, but I think it was the actual mayoral
Yes, sir.
last time you
I do
basically
remember.
said, here's the 5 or 6 dates, and based on those, here's the backwards planning that would be necessary. You'll bring that information to us next time.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Okay.
good. Thank you. Any other questions or comments on item number 19? Okay, thank you. Item number 20, approve mayor's reappointment of Jason Blevins for the City Planning Commission.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Roll call?
Sharbit?
Aye.
Weston?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
McLean? Aye. Schultz?
Aye, thank you. Item 22, approve mayor's reappointment of Debbie Pollard to the Housing Authority.
I think you missed 21.
Yeah, 21.
Well, I'll come back to that. I was saving Neil for last.
Okay.
You always do.
Approve mayor's nomination of Neil Johnson as chairperson of the MCVB board.
Motion approved.
And a second, please.
Second.
Weston?
Aye.
Sharbit?
Aye.
McLean? Aye. Johnson?
Aye.
Schultz?
Aye, thank you. And that's what Neil is, the change we made in the ordinance earlier, allowing any member of the council to serve as a CVB chair, that Neil is fulfilling that role, and I appreciate it very much.
You're welcome, Mayor.
Now to item 22, approve mayor's reappointment of Debbie Pollard to the Housing Authority.
Motion to approve, Mayor.
Second.
And second, please, roll call.
Johnson?
Aye.
Sharbit?
Aye.
Weston?
Aye.
McLean? Aye. Schultz?
Aye. Item 23, approve mayor's reappointment of Stephen Blair to the Housing Authority.
I make a motion.
And a second, please.
I'll second, Mayor.
Roll call.
McLean? Aye. Johnson?
Aye.
Weston?
Aye.
Sharbit?
Aye.
Schultz?
Aye. Now, here's the trade-off here. This was the deal.
There's always a price to pay.
Approve the mayor's nomination of Doug Weston to the Board of Adjustments to complete Neil Johnson's term.
I would love to make that motion to approve.
And a second, please.
Second.
Johnson?
Roll call.
Aye.
McLean?
Aye.
Weston?
Aye.
Sharbit?
Aye.
Schultz?
Aye, Doug, really thank you for taking on those responsibilities. I appreciate it. Item 25, approve mayor's reappointment of Tara Elke to the Parks and Rec Board.
Motion to approve, Mayor.
Second, please.
Second.
Roll call.
Johnson?
Aye.
Weston?
Aye.
McLean?
Aye.
Sharbit?
Aye.
Schultz?
Aye. And item 26, approve mayor's reappointment of Steve Bayshore to the Parks and Rec Board.
Motion to approve, Mayor.
And a second, please.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Johnson?
Aye.
McLean?
Aye.
Sharbit?
Aye.
Weston?
Aye.
Schultz?
Aye. Sorry, Kristen, but David said we can't do all these at one time.
I was just, why isn't this in the?
We can't do them all at once. You would think we could, but we can't. Item 27, the other new business, if any, which has arisen since the posting of the agenda. Any new business?
None, Your Honor.
Thank you. Item 28, staff reports. Written reports are included in your packet if available. The staff is present for questions.
Your Honor, there is one thing I would like to verbalize today. We just discovered this today. The city's voicemail system has crashed. So if you are calling City Hall and you get voicemail, I regret to inform you we are unable to retrieve it. So I would encourage you to call back and keep calling back until you either talk to a human who can take a written message or persevere, and you will eventually find one of us.
And do we have a time frame on when that might be up?
We have no idea what's wrong with it, sir. So
Okay.
it's a very, very old phone system, and who knows? We'll keep you posted. But
Okay, thank you. I have also just want to remind the public that starting next year, which will be here very shortly, these regular council meetings will begin at 5:30 instead of 6. And so, starting, I guess, the first meeting in January, the meetings will be at 5:30 and will be telecast at 5:30, or will there be a delay?
no, sir, they're going to be telecast at 5:30.
Telecast live, starting at 5:30. That's all I have. Any other comments?
Yeah, I need to read that, Brady. Miss Amanda Davis was so kind to give this to me earlier, and just want to make this announcement. Tulsa Praise Orchestra at the Coleman Coliseum. The Coleman Theater is pleased to announce the return of the Tulsa Praise Orchestra for the Big Band Christmas Show. This event will take place on Saturday, December 21st at 7:30 p.m. Ticket prices for the show is $14 for adults, $12 for seniors, $10 for students and children. Tickets can be ordered over the phone by calling 918-540-2425 or at the Coleman box office at 101 North Main Street. A $1 preservation fee will be added to each ticket to assist in the restoration of the historic Coleman Theater. For more information, contact the Coleman Theater at 918-540-2425. And that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Neil.
Thank you, Amanda, for bringing that.
Any other announcements?
Nothing.
Okay. Item 30, authorize city manager to hire on-call internal affairs investigator. That sounds kind of ominous, Mr. Bishop.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, it's a necessary function, unfortunately. We have, in the past, been utilizing the Tulsa County Sheriff's Office Internal Affairs Division to conduct our internal affairs and investigations. Unfortunately, we've kind of wore out a welcome, and it's appropriate at this point in time for us to retain our own internal affairs. It's not something in a department as small as Miami that we can hire a full-time officer to be a internal affairs investigator. So staff is requesting authorization for me to locate and retain on contract probably a retired internal affairs investigator to conduct our internal affairs investigations.
So this person would just be on retainer and
An on-call retainer, just like we do with a lot of our engineering. We would bring them in to do it. And
just on as needed basis.
right, and unfortunately, you know, there's it's not an allusion to the perception that there's a big problem. It's just, it's a normal routine thing inside law enforcement, especially when you're dealing with due process issues, that you have the ability to routinely investigate certain things just to make sure that everything's okay.
And in fact, this investigator would not be limited to just police department
No,
issues
we
either.
we
use
could,
them
we
for
could,
anything.
yeah, we could use them in other departments. We routinely use outside internal affairs investigators in other areas of the city. They're limited to their area of expertise. This would be predominantly a law enforcement expertise, but that could also come to play in all the public safety departments that have that nexus.
Any questions for Mr. Bishop? Any
If-
other questions?
No, sir. There you go. No, sir. No, I don't.
Okay, do we have a motion?
That's where I'll go ahead and chime in if I may. I want to clarify something, if the mayor and council would be willing to return to item 28, staff reports, for just a moment.
Okay.
Before returning. In the, on item 13, you, on the consent calendar, authorized me to hire outside counsel to assist with the Blitz bankruptcy litigation.
Yes.
In your packet, you had a proposed agreement with one of the law firms that I'd spoken with. I haven't asked you to approve that contract. I've asked you to authorize me to retain outside counsel within that targeted monetary allocation using funds already approved city attorney's budget. And I simply wanted to clarify that I may not necessarily use that particular law firm. I spoke with Travelers Adjuster again today a couple of times, and there's another law firm that I'll be talking to tomorrow morning that I might elect to go with. And I brought this up simply because I don't want to give the impression, and I could see how that impression could have been given, that I'm asking you to approve that particular law firm. That was meant as an exemplar. It was what I had to date. But I would like to go ahead and proceed to retain a firm within my existing budget to help with the Blitz bankruptcy defense litigation. And again, I only bring that up sort of in an abundance of professional and interpersonal communication caution, so that if you subsequently see a different law firm identified on a claims report than what you thought you were approving, I'm clarifying right now that I'm not necessarily going to use that firm.
Okay, thank you, David. So we will return to item 30 then. Do we have a motion?
Or 31.
Well, I don't think we've dealt with item 30 yet.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve item 30.
Thank you. And a second, please.
Second.
Roll call.
Johnson?
Aye.
Charbit?
Aye.
Weston?
Aye.
McLean?
Aye.
Schultz?
Aye. Now we're to item 31, motion to adjourn.
Doug, motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Second, please.
I'll second.